Look, have mercy on me. Hello, everyone, and welcome into the On the Bluff pod. Yes, I'm opening it up because for episode 40, how about this? Kenny Stubblefield is in studio with me.
Let's go.
But Christian Fowler is a no-show for the 40th episode. This should be a great day in the history of On the Bluff and Bluff City Media, but here we are.
I hereby title this episode of On the Bluff as The Gabe Coon Show on 92.9 ESPN.
See, I already did that earlier today, man.
Oh.
Luckily, I'm not talked out, though.
Okay,
Luckily,
good.
I'm not talked out, so we're in a good spot. How was your weekend, brother? You good?
My weekend was terrible. Let me tell you why.
Nice.
My wife got COVID.
Oh, Lord. It's going back around,
It
man.
is.
It is. I got the fiance in Baptist East doing her PRN deal as a nurse again, and she says that
Yes.
people are catching it left and right.
Left and right. So she got it on Friday. She had been feeling bad since Wednesday, thought it was allergies, and tested. She woke me up on Friday morning screaming from the bottom of the stairs, I got COVID.
That's not a good way to be woken up.
Not a good way to be woken up. And so basically we quarantined her in the house, and I was on dad. It was great. I love my kids. My kids are awesome. So I got to do dad duty all weekend. Took a break from everything else and just took care of the family. So, I mean, so that was a fun part of the weekend. Her getting sick was not cool.
Yeah. I was right there with, was it Lucas Glover who won the FedEx St. Jude championship? I was swamped assed all weekend.
Man.
I went out to the tournament for a little bit. That was cool. It was cool, man. I got some AC. I had to be in the AC. I couldn't walk around.
No.
I'd have died, bro.
Listen, there's a lot that we can do, but being out in the hot, swampy, nasty ain't it.
It ain't. So are you going to sign off of me trying to call Christian? Should I call Christian?
We should absolutely call
Should I
Christian.
do this? Okay, hold up.
Absolutely.
Give me 1 second. Let's
Should hold his
And by the
feet
way,
to the fire.
again, On the Bluff Pod, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's
Apple,
go.
Spotify, hit up the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. Let's see. Let's call Christian real quick. Let's call Christian, see what he's up to. Let's see. Should I put him on speaker? Yeah, he's on speaker.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's hear it. Do you hear that? Is it coming through?
Oh, it's definitely coming through.
Come on, let's see. Let's see. Come on, Christian. You got to answer, brother. Let's hear it. Oh, he ain't answering. Look at him.
He ain't gonna
He's standing us up.
He stood us up in studio.
Damn. Oh, he's calling. He's calling. Okay. Hey, brother. How are you?
I'm good.
Hey, we're live. We're live right now. Episode 40, and you're ditching out on me. You doing all right?
I'm good.
What are you in a car? Is that what I hear?
I'm in a car. Yeah, we're going to dinner right now.
Okay. So am I distracting you?
No, not distracting me.
Okay. Where are you going to dinner?
We are going to a place called Sea Level, like a steakhouse and seafood place.
Oh, never mind. Don't let me bother you anymore, brother. Well, I'll talk to you next week. Golly.
All right, brother.
All right, man.
He had no
Hey, we
desire.
had to do a little. Yeah, he was not for it.
He was like, I'm on vacation, bro.
But he is on vacation, and I'm in. I want to start though. Memphis football. A lot's been made, I think, in the past week, Kenny, and I've heard this so much, so like at my station, at other stations, about a lack of excitement. And I'm going to be honest. I think there is, to a certain extent, a little bit of a lack of excitement. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just a kind of a lack of buzz around the program. I mean, they got a game in 2.5 weeks, and
Right.
not really many people are talking about it right now.
Yeah, and I understand you open with Bethune-Cookman, and I think the first 3 games are going to be relatively easy. You got Bethune-Cookman, then you're going to have to deal with Arkansas State on the road, then Navy. Then you have that 3-week stretch where it's just murderer's row for this schedule in particular. I mean, you're going to have Mizzou, then Tulane, Mizzou, Boise State, then Tulane.
Right.
So that's where we're really going to see where the money's made. But from a lack of excitement standpoint, I guess I agree with some folks that are saying that. But what I have really noticed, at least for me, in my mindset on this season, I feel like it's more wait and see than anything. The last 2 years, let's be honest, I don't think there's been buzz. I don't think there's been a generating of excitement. I don't think there's anything that you can look at and be overly excited about, considering 6-6 and 3-5 in conference. Like I fully agree with that. But the amount of turnover on this roster, the amount of guys coming in that are just talented as hell. I mean, the Simeon Blairs, Malik Feasters, those guys in the secondary, Toski Dove, Demir Blankumsey, Blake Watson on the offensive end. Like, there's a lot of guys that you don't know what to expect from. But I go back to what we talked about last week. Seth Hennigan came out of day one of fall camp talking about this being the most talented roster he's been a part of. And everything I hear from camp, and I mean everything I hear from camp that are from people around the facility all the time watching practices, they say that they agree with those sentiments. They say that this is the most talented team. There's a lot of guys on that D-line that should be impressive to watch. Josh Ellison, Derek Hunter, guys like that, Darius Jones. It's just the issue we've run into is the last 2 years have been 6-6, so the expectations aren't near as high, and no one knows what to expect from the guys coming in ultimately because they haven't seen them play.
Let me ask you this. I have a theory on this. You are the preeminent, you and Christian are the preeminent football guys in terms of kind of having your fingers on the pulse of the program and on the city when it comes to football. I have a theory about why there might not be as much buzz and excitement about it. And I think it is absolutely those things that you talked about. But I also wonder if partly the excitement over the last few years has been centered around the conference realignment talk.
Yes.
And the fact that there is an opportunity for that to happen.
Yes, and here's what I reject very heavily. I don't think that any one decision on the Tiger athletic department, I don't think them getting into a Power 5 is because Ryan Silverfield's been hired and we've lost momentum with the football program.
Totally
I think that is a ridiculous statement. I think there's a lot of things that go into the reason the Tigers have not gotten into a Power 5, and I think it has to do with the investment in football early in the 2000s. They could have capitalized on D'Angelo Williams. They didn't. They could have invested a whole lot earlier, but John Calipari basically ran that athletic department at that time, and they invested so much into basketball. And I see there's a lot of people out there that have sort of thrown out the idea yet again of, hey, let's go the UConn Big East route, not worry about football. I don't think there's a difference in what they've been doing in doing that in particular. And the reason I say that, because when you talk about the college football playoff, right now they have access. I understand that the Pac-12 is now gone, so the automatic qualifying and everything they're going to do with the college football playoff may change around. They may take the top 12 teams, which would ultimately hurt a program like Memphis being in the group of 5. The access wouldn't necessarily be there, but they haven't done that yet. But if we're still talking about access to a national championship, what makes that different than where this football program has been in the history of time? They've never had access to a college football playoff. They've never had access to a national championship. I don't know if that should be the end-all, be-all of that conversation. Also, what I don't understand, Memphis basketball has always been top 15, top 20 in spending.
Right.
Always. The investment has stayed there. Now, have they given more to the football program since 2014? Sure, absolutely. But ultimately, last year, they spent around $14 million. That was 18th in the country. That was 18th in the country for basketball programs. Yeah. That's up there with the likes of a bunch of power conference schools, national championship winners, blue bloods. So I always hear that conversation. It just falls on deaf ears and bothers the hell out of me, man.
Do you think that it's a possibility that like fans are kind of feeling dejected because there's been a hope that if the football program, if the athletic department gets into a Power 5 conference, that the football team then all of a sudden, not only are they have more of a cash flow, but then there's also access to a potential national championship run, a playoff run. And now there's not. Now there feels like there's not.
Yeah, well, it depends what happens with the college football playoff with the 12 team here in 2024. If they ultimately do the top 12 teams in the country and don't have automatic qualifiers, that would be frustrating. But I think that's part of it. And that's part of the reason I look around at the city of Memphis and how they're going about their expectations and their thought process on this year's football season. I think game to game may mean more in the grand scheme of things. And the only reason I say that is because I think a lot hinges on every game when it comes to realignment, right? Like, I feel like people need to sort of change their mindset on this team this year. First of all, I hear good things, but the other part of this is you're trying to show your value while you still can out there with realignment spinning.
Yep. Totally agree. I mean, as a former Tiger former player, does it frustrate you? Like, do you put yourself back in the position of being a player and saying, man, like, hey, Tiger fans, look at what is about, like, this team is extremely talented. Look at what, don't give up hope. Like, let's go into this season and be ready to go.
But even more so, like, yes, I agree with that sentiment, but like, I think even more so than there not being buzz, not being excitement, I think most fans are sort of laying dormant, waiting in the weeds and hoping good things happen and expecting the worst, as it has sort of turned out the last 2 years. They lost that game against Houston last year. People know how much they've given up leads the last years. The run game hadn't been the right way. I think there's a lot of people that are just in wait and see mode more so than a lack of excitement.
Basically saying,
and maybe you could make the case that those two things go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But I just look at this roster and look at what they've put together. I don't blame people for being in wait and see mode, but I think that the buzz, the hopes for this program are still damn high. I mean, when you look at the group of five, why wouldn't they be?
Of course. I mean, I think you could even hear it from Ryan Silverfield and some of his, even at the AAC media day when he was asked, are you frustrated with being picked middle of the pack? And he's like, what have we done to not get picked in the middle of the pack? He's in that same mode too, right?
Yes, and they got picked fourth in that poll, the preseason media poll, and I don't think that would be a good finish for this team this year.
No.
I think they need to aspire way higher than that, and I don't see why they shouldn't. Tulane and UTSA may be good teams, but they're not world beaters. They're not teams that you should preclude yourself from beating if you want to get to the spot you want to be. And if you were to want to be a Power 5 school, which the University of Memphis wants to be in athletics, you have to beat teams like that. So the aspirations still need to be high for this program. But I got to say, man, I've been hearing really good things about what's coming out of camp. And I know that there's been less reporting on it. And that's also part of this. I think that as media members, we can control the narrative a little bit better and make there be more buzz. And I don't know if that has necessarily been the calling card of this offseason. But I think ultimately everything I've heard out of camp is positive as hell. And I know I'm trying to paint a nice picture here, but this team, there is some things about it that people don't understand yet that they're going to have to understand going into the season.
You said this from the very beginning of the offseason. It's this defense to me.
Yep, it is this defense. The back end is just a bunch of guys with a bunch of experience. I mean, think about Malik Feaster was great at Jacksonville State. I don't stop hearing good things about him. He went to Florida State for a year, didn't get to play all that much, but he was great at Jacksonville State. He ends up here. He's a long, relatively rangy wide receiver, really good man coverage from what I understand to this point in camp. Simeon Blair, 30 starts at Arkansas.
Captain of the team in Arkansas.
Captain of the team at Arkansas after starting 30 some odd games.
Memphis.
Hey, he's already a captain here. Jalen Johnson from Ohio State. You just keep going down the list. There's so many guys in the secondary. Chandler Martin from ETSU should be a difference maker immediately. A guy that I'm hearing a lot of buzz about, man, is Josh Ellison, too, up front from Oklahoma. Transfer from Oklahoma at D tackle.
Big,
this defense,
swampy man, dude.
This defense is going to have to run the day, I think, the first part of the season. And like we have come used to the offense pacing the season, generally speaking. It's going to have to be the defense pacing everything and making it easier on Seth Hennigan and that offense until they get it all figured out. I think that's the truth of it. But when you look at the pieces they have on the offensive side and what they've tried to invest in, what they've tried to go get on the transfer portal, they have the pieces. It's just all got to come together the right way. And that run game has to get going if they want to get where they want to go offensively.
I totally agree. And again, it's like you and Christian always talk about. It all starts up from the front for both the defense and the offensive side of the ball. Man, you see, we had Sutton Smith in studio last week,
right?
And that's one of the things that he talked about is just he wants to be. I mean, I asked him the question. I said, what sets you apart in terms of your abilities? And I said, I know everybody wants to talk about the running back room being, pretty deep and kumbaya and everybody's happy and everybody just wants to see each other win.
Right.
And I'm like, but I know you want to be the guy.
Of course.
And he's like, yeah. And I said, what sets you apart? And he's like, man, I feel like I can just do it all. And the Tigers need somebody like that.
Well, and here's the thing. They have 3 guys deep in that backfield who are do-it-all backs. Bull Hargrove's a guy that I don't know how much run he'll get this year, but he's a 4-star, went to Mississippi State out of high school, ended up transferring here. He can catch really well out of the backfield. Sutton Smith is that way. Blake Watson, when he was at Old Dominion, is that way. He can catch a lot out of the backfield. Like, they have some guys with multiple different facets to their game in that backfield. And then they have two, in my opinion, somewhat bruisers in between the tackles guys. Brandon Thomas is still on campus, as much as people haven't much talked about him. Yep. I remember his first 6 games 2 years ago, though. He looked like the next one in line, next running back in line. But Brandon Thomas and Jay Ducker can be those in between the tackles guys. Now, I think ultimately what Ryan has always wanted to do with that backfield, he's always wanted to have one guy that he leans on, but we haven't gotten to that point. We have yet to get to that point, but he has 5 guys deep, I think, they could be lead backs. It's just about who absolutely emerges. And you talked about it starting up front. O-line has to be better. And to be honest with you, I really want to see what these transfers do early. Can Marcus Henderson get involved and be a starter and play meaningful snaps early in the season? Can Xavier Hill from LSU get in there? He was competing for a starting spot at LSU last year. Can he get in there early and show something? That would give me a lot more hope about where that offensive line is early in the year.
It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think that is going to be the key for all of it, is what can the offensive line do? Have they, I think it's very safe to say that Ryan needed to make a switch at the position coach, offensive line position coach position last year. He needed to make that switch because he needed to find somebody that I think – kind of
was in lockstep
with him,
And here's the thing, and I think he did this with both of his hires this offseason, Larry Smith at wide receiver, Jeff Myers at O-line. He got 2 younger guys, more moldable, that will be more willing to listen to him. Because in the end of the day last year, and really since he's been here with Jim Bridge is an older coach. Jim Bridge is a guy who sort of has his thought process on how he wants to do things. He was really good friends with Mike McIntyre. I think that's part of the reason he ended up getting the job. But you have to have someone a little more moldable and willing to do what you want to do. And I think Ryan has that in Jeff Myers. I think he has that in a big way. They've been a lot more, he's been a lot more involved in the offensive line room than he has been since he took the head job. And I think he really wants to instill his lessons and how he got it done when he was under Mike Norvell. I think he wants to instill those lessons on Jeff Myers on the offensive staff more than he has in the past.
I mean, I just think it's clear that the success on the offensive side of the ball is going to live and die with the offensive line.
Yep.
To get those holes open for guys like Jay and guys like Brandon and guys like, Sutton, to not have to run it up the gut, two plays out of a
set of downs.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, here's the thing is I think they need to be more multiple too. We've seen too many times these past 2 years, inside zone, outside zone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. That's all they tend to run. I mean, the power, they try to do some zone read works off of power looks, but the counter that was here, that Darryl Henderson ran so damn well for chunk plays, the counter that was here with Mike Norvell, it's just not here. Anymore. Kenny Gainwell, how well he was running the ball with all those multiple different looks.
Tell me what that means.
Counter. So here's the thing: inside zone, outside zone are very easy concepts to grasp onto. O-line goes all one way. One hits wider and one hits a little more shallow. Right? Inside zone's usually the run up the gut that they constantly run when they get into those hurry up situations. And the idea is the running back is supposed to find his hole. He's supposed to read what the defense is giving him, how are the D tackles moving, where are the linebackers going, and he is supposed to find a hole and have good vision. And I thought Darryl Henderson did a good job with it. Tony Pollard was probably the best zone runner we had when I was there. I mean, his vision, and you see it with the Cowboys now, his vision was unbelievable. He would find his hole, put his foot in the ground, and get north and south about as immediate as you could possibly imagine. Darryl was a little better with the gap running schemes, the power, and the counter. And counter means, which is what we ran so well, is sort of the Lincoln Riley school of thought when he was at Oklahoma. Counter means you're going to have 2 pullers, one kicks out, one wraps up in the hole for the linebacker, and everybody else blocks down and tries to wipe away the entire D-line, get up on the linebackers.
Okay.
So that was such a staple of why Mike Norvell's offense ran so well. That was why our run game was so good, is because you could get those explosive plays because the defense is constantly on their heels with all these different schemes coming at them. They're trying to read polars one play. Then they're trying to make sure they keep gap integrity on the next play. It just becomes tough the more different sort of schemes you run at a defense. And I feel like they've gotten away from it so big the past 2 to 3 years. And you know what's frustrating about that is Ryan is an offensive line coach by trade. I mean, the amount of knowledge he has about offensive blocking schemes is massive, but he has to get back into his bag like he was when Norvell was here.
Do you think that decision has been made because of a perceived, maybe the offensive line can't handle that?
I think probably a little bit of that. I think a lot of what we've seen is Ryan is a guy who has hired guys that he wants to go let cook in his coaching staff, right? He has a bunch of guys that he hires, he trusts them, he gives them full, their responsibility is their responsibility. He's going to be the CEO type guy. I think he's starting to get more involved, and that's something we need to see. But ultimately, I think everybody's in wait-and-see mode with this team.
Let's go.
So we will wait and see. But I'm telling you, from a talent perspective, this team is headed in the right direction. Not too much on basketball really in the past week since the Dominican Republic trip there, Kenny.
Yep.
I got to say. But I have to pick your brain since I always give you shit on this.
Okay.
You have any Malcolm Dandridge nuggets to drop? What's up? Because SLU filled their last the recruiting spot the past week.
Well, I think it's a twofold thing. I think we are dealing with a situation right now with Malcolm where there is going to be a scholarship available to him if Penny wants to fill it with him. There is a scholarship available for him. I think that there's kind of a two things happening right now. One of them is Penny is trying to decide if he wants Malcolm back on the team.
Right.
I think that's
from what I've heard. He has said the door is always open for Malcolm, but
and this is where we talk about the loyalty that Penny shows to his guys, right? Like guys that have, he was a part of the first number 1 class that he ever had, right? In the 2019 class. He was the first commit, from that outside of Alex Lomax
played
in
with
2018.
Played for him in high school.
Played for him in high school.
Right.
There's a level of loyalty there. And I think a large portion of it might be the fact that I don't know the ins and outs of this, but I think is trying to figure out where Malcolm's health is at, right? Yeah. That's kind of been the predominant story of his career, is just his health.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you're going to bring back a guy like Malcolm Dandridge, and it depends what Malcolm wants, because there's been reports about him being reached out to by Gonzaga. His whole recruiting process has been strange this time around because he's not talking, and he's sort of leaving these little crumbs out for everybody to try to follow, right? Like that's sort of his whole like this entire offseason, it's been that. But they need front court depth. Probably. I mean, if I'm looking at their roster and I look at one thing they don't need any more ball handlers. I mean, Caleb Mills, Jalen Young, Javon Quinn, are they going to handle that? They don't need really that much more shooting. Nick Jourdain showed some stretchability. Jaquan Walton's a 40% guy. If Jonathan Pierre hits the floor, he's a 40% guy. Jayden Hardaway has some game there. Javon Quinterly can shoot. Like the shooting's not necessarily a massive need. Right now, you need front court depth. You don't know if DeAndre Williams is going to come back. So you have to make sure that you have enough to be able to rotate in. Now, do I think there's ways for Penny Hardaway to get around that? Absolutely. He could play small ball lineups. Jaquan Walton could man the 4. David Jones, I know it's not necessarily ideal, but he could man the 4. He's a dirty work guy that can go get you some boards. But in an ideal world, I think you need to find maybe one more body to man a front court position to get some rotational minutes. We have to see where Malcolm's injury status is right this second, but he knows what's expected of him in a Penny Hardaway system, and he can give you those spurts. It never worked as a starter because he could only give you spurts, but as a bench player that's getting 10 to 12 minutes a game, I wouldn't mind to see him in a return to Memphis.
Well, think about it this way. If you bring Malcolm Dandridge back into the fold, you're too deep at every position.
Right. Right.
And that's
because right now, without DeAndre, it's Jordan Brown and Nick Jourdain. It's your natural bigs.
Right.
Those are your natural bigs. You don't have anything else outside of that. Unless DeAndre comes back, you add your third one. But you could be too deep. You bring in Malcolm, because they don't have anybody who's sort of that natural 5 banger in the post, let me get rebounds, let me set screens. They don't have anybody outside of Jordan Brown that really brings that to the table ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with you on this. And, I've covered this team now since 2018. I would say that this recruitment, based on what I've seen and kind of conversations I've had, has been one of the more wild recruitments I've ever seen.
It's just crumbs.
It just like crumbs. You're just like, what is going on, right?
Because usually you see some type of national guy have some lead,
right? On
this guy's thinking about going to SLU. He's thinking about going to Gonzaga, whatever it is. You haven't heard that,
right?
And I think we've dragged this out to the point, Kenny, and I want your opinion on this. I think we've dragged this out to the point that if it ain't Memphis, who the hell is it going to be?
I think that's exactly where we're at right now. And I think that's where we're at. I legitimately think that it's either Memphis or not. Like Memphis or nobody, right?
But no, but that's frustrating. That would be a frustrating thing there for Malcolm, wasting that last year just doing the whole recruiting thing when he had things on the table. He had other offers on the table.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes in terms of that decision, right? Like we don't know.
He's been quiet, man. He's been very quiet.
He's been quiet, but it's like you said, he's been throwing these little crumbs out. Little
attention here, little attention there.
And having covered Malcolm since he was a junior in high school, this is absolutely this checks every box in terms of like, listen, man, I know there's a lot of people with a lot of strong feelings both ways about Malcolm. That kid, I love that kid so much. Like he is a trip, dude. The dude is hilarious, and there's not really anything that he does that's not on that isn't on purpose.
Yeah,
and in terms of like little pieces of information he's given out. So I would be thrilled to have him back on the squad. I think especially in the role that he would be needed.
It would
to
be a smaller role, and that's fine.
And he's fine with that.
And I think, like let's say Gonzaga's on the table. That's a small role for him too. You know what I mean? I wonder what's out there for him to potentially go cook. I thought SLU, there was some potential for him to get some pretty extended run. But now with what's on the table, I feel like Memphis is probably one of the better places he could potentially land to get 10 to 12 trusted minutes maybe per game.
I have a question for you. This might get us in trouble, but I'm going to ask you this question anyway.
Go ahead.
Who gets more minutes? Malcolm at Memphis, Chandler at Arkansas?
Oh gosh, I see. I'm going to get in trouble. Golly, I would say Chandler Lawson at Arkansas. That's going to be strange, man, because Trayvon Brazil's coming back.
Yep.
I think I'd still.
You can say plead the fifth if you want to.
I think I'd plead the fifth, but weirdly enough, I think I would go Malcolm at Memphis, just because I think Penny trusts him.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, over the years, he just
100%.
He knows what to expect from the guy.
Not anything to do with their skill level or whatever they do.
It's about situation.
It's situational.
Yeah.
Like that, and which is why I think we were all kind of stunned that Chandler went to Arkansas and left Memphis and went to Arkansas.
Speaking of which, we wouldn't even be talking really about about Malcolm all that
kind of
much
off the table, wouldn't it?
If Chandler was on campus, it would be because first of all, you'd run out of roster spots, and second of all, that would be that would be sort of a guy who could rotate in and give you some of those minutes of big, and he would have got some run here. I'm telling you,
absolutely, he would have
because of the defensive side of the ball. That's what you need to understand for a Penny Hardaway coach system. Now, final thing before we hop into the hot three. NBA Christmas Day games, Kenny. Golly, they got released by Shams Charania, and they are as follows. Bucks at Knicks. Okay, game, whatever. 76ers at Heat. Cool. Celtics at Lakers. All right, that's a historical rivalry, and both teams pretty damn good. Mavs at Suns, and then Warriors at Nuggets. And the big sort of problem here for people around Memphis is the fact that the Grizzlies aren't part of it. And I get it. Because I do think in the end of the day, considering what's happened with John Morant, considering what's happened with this team and how they flamed out in the playoffs, I think this is punitive.
100%.
They didn't live up to expectations last year after setting a record for nationally televised games. That's the truth of it. They didn't live up to it.
How many of the nationally televised games did they lose?
A fair amount. And Jaren was never that great on national TV.
Yep.
They just didn't hold up their end of the bargain, and it ended with Ja Morant and a 25-game suspension, right? So, like, that limelight, that light that they got, that showing that they got in front of nationally televised opponents, they tended to not do a good job with it. And we could make the argument as well for Ja Morant. Yeah. He didn't handle it very well. Now, I'm not saying it's directly nationally televised games and getting all that attention that made him pull out guns on Instagram Live. Like, I'm not directly attributing that to it. But there is a point of it where you've had this meteoric rise and you may feel as if you're somewhat untouchable. But we figure out that Ja Morant, this Grizzlies team, is relatively touchable. And considering how this went for the NBA, I give you 8 nationally televised games. You set a record for your franchise. And in the end of the day, you end up with a 25-game suspension for your best player, and he's going to be off the floor. If I'm looking at it, I leave them off of this because they have not been able to handle it, and they've made me a little bit uncomfortable. And if you need more proof on this, I look at Ja Morant's 25-game suspension. When the Grizzlies played last year, 31 games in on Christmas Day against the Warriors, that was 31 games in. You could tell us, if you're the NBA and you just want TV ratings and you want to make sure that you are capitalizing on Christmas Day, Ja Morant would be part of the fold. The story you could tell, putting him on national TV on Christmas Day would be massive, but they're not doing it, and it's purely punitive. And
you think Adam Silver's doing the Grizzlies a favor?
I'll get to that in a second. I think that I was told when I was at Memphis by a strength coach, my first strength coach at Memphis.
I love this quote.
His quote was, when I pat you on the backside, don't shit in my hand. When I pat you on the backside, do not defecate into my hand. Meaning if I give you praise, if I give you what you want, don't make me look dumb on the back end. And I feel like that's what Adam Silver in the NBA office is saying. I feel like that's what they're looking at. We gave you all these nationally televised games, and on the back end, we look dumb for doing so. You made us look foolish. I think that's where we're at, and it's unfortunate. But I think there's silver linings to all this, Kenny. And the reason I say that is because I think historically in the city of Memphis, all the good teams have been less talked about, right? You can talk about the grit and grind era. That was just a well put together, oiled machine that just won games, ended up in a Western Conference Finals, sort of the peak of Memphis Grizzlies basketball. And I think there's more peaks in the future because of this young core they have together. But that team was not as discussed as normal 50-win teams. That team was not as discussed as normal teams that get into the Western Conference Finals. Sometimes when you're working in the dark, as Ja Morant always likes to put it, when you put your head down, when you stay out of the news, when you stay out of the limelight, stay out of the spotlight, things can work better for you. And I think that's what the Grizzlies need to do. Put your head down, show the work, and go win games, and then everything will be solved. This could be a year hiatus. You'll be on Christmas Day next game. But I think for now, the silver lining here is, hey, they were put in the spotlight too early. It got the best of them. So take them out of it for a while and see how they respond. And something tells me that they'll respond relatively well.
Yep.
That's. I mean, I just look at how this team's put together, and I really like it. And I think they'll respond in a meaningful, solid way. And once Ja Morant gets back from that 25-game suspension, I think we'll see a hungrier Ja Morant than we've ever seen.
I agree with you.
Yep. So we'll see. But let's see if I agree with you on the topics you bring up next. What do you think?
Let's go.
Yeah, we got the hot 3 on the way after these messages.
Will Memphis play a team of that caliber in the regular season this year?
Wow. I asked a similar question. I'm going to say no. Because I don't know.
Are we talking like 4 legitimate NBA guys?
That's what I'm saying. Like, they have absolute NBA players. Like, what team are you going to play that has?
I mean,
that
I think
many
there's probably
NBA players?
a potential in the Bahamas, Atlantis, battle for Atlantis. I mean,
on
you're talking
one team. On one team,
I mean, I think it depends on who you get matched up.
that is so rare.
I know, TJ. From a professional standpoint, probably not.
Tune in to Tigers Untapped with TJ Willis and Trey Lasley every Wednesday at 3 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
What's up, guys? I'm so excited to announce that we have partnered with Coaching for Literacy, and you can read more about them at coachingforliteracy.org or follow them on social media at Coaching for Literacy. Your subscription to Bluff City NIL is 100% tax deductible because of our partnership together. Thank you for supporting Memphis Tigers student athletes and helping promote the monumental cause of childhood literacy.
76ers versus Heat. Now I know the Miami Heat went to the NBA Finals. Looked like they totally didn't belong there when they got there, but I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna go there at all. I'm not gonna knock any team who goes farther than my team. And y'all wasn't good, man. I mean, all right, whatever. They're fine. Celtics like.
Do you know what it is? Let me tell you what it is. The NBA is expecting that Miami's absolutely getting Dame, and they're going to have Dame.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. Yep. But yeah,
we got Parrish back here mumbling, bro. That man's mumbling.
Man, grab the mic, man. If you got
Come
something to
on
say,
up
grab
here,
the mic, man. Gotta cut him out no damn Miami Heat, man. You back there mumbling. What y'all gonna be doing? Don't worry about it, man.
You know Dame going to Miami.
Man, get out of here, man. Man, get out of here, bro. Y'all the most entitled team. I'm watching Winning Time of the night, and I'm like, look at Pat Riley, punk ass, man. Get out of here, man.
Tune in to The Anthony Sane Show, Wednesdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. weekly on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. It's the Hot Three, the solo act.
The solo, yes. Well, you're going to be here.
It's the Gabe Kuhn Hot Three.
Let's rock. What you got for
get
me,
it.
Kenny?
All right, man. Obviously, not a whole lot of basketball stuff coming out right now, but Memphis' very own Jaren Jackson Jr. is representing Team USA in the FIBA World Cup. And they are on kind of an exhibition going around and kind of getting ready to play in the actual tournament that starts, I think, in the end of August, maybe.
Rocking with some friendlies, yeah. They had the one against Puerto Rico and then Spain.
Then they play Slovenia next.
Yep.
Now they played Spain this past weekend. Jaren Jackson Jr. pumped in 14 points, had 3 blocks. I mean, just played really well. Jalen Brunson obviously did well. What have you seen so far? What have you seen about Jaren and this national team?
Well, first of all, I always have to point this out when it comes to national teams. When it was put together, first of all, the FIBA World Cup is a little different than the Olympics. You get the young guys that are up and coming that may be all-stars, may be on the way to being all-stars. Everybody was just clowning this team when it was put together. And they just beat the projected number one seed in the FIBA World Cup in Spain.
Beat them.
So, like, what are we even talking about? We freak out constantly about USA basketball, but every time they get on the floor, they're arguably, if not always, the best team in the world. And they handled Spain by 10 points. They beat the hell out of Puerto Rico.
In Spain. Let's not forget it was in Spain.
Exactly. Like, it's just, it gets annoying to constantly deal with the all the talk around what the USA team's going to look like, and then they come out and they show what they're going to look like, and it's usually pretty damn good. But either way, off that point, Jaren Jackson Jr., he was voted through training camp the best player on the World Cup team for the USA. And he's showing it, man. Now, the scoring is kind of down at this moment, I guess, to a certain extent.
Yep.
Although that first game against Puerto Rico, 12, 7, and 2 blocks, and he had 8 of the first 12 points. And to see how Steve Kerr is using him, he's trying to make him a fulcrum, like a bright spot on offense. And how he's using him, I think the Grizzlies could learn some lessons from, because Jaren Jackson Jr., he does so many things well, right? The defensive anchor part of his game, defensive player of the year bag, the blocks, the scoring around the rim's gotten better. He's 6'11" with a 3-point ball. It looks a little weird when he shoots it, but it goes in most of the time. But seeing him as a 5 a natural 5 on-ball screener, getting to some pick and rolls, getting into a pick and then finding out times to dive and them delivering passes to him around the rim. Seeing some of the pick and pop concepts that they've come up with. He's never been a good screener, and I think he's learning a lot of that.
Yep.
And that is something that, as much as we downplay the importance of the FIBA World Cup and playing for Team USA, that could be important for the Grizzlies come season.
Yeah, you're absolutely seeing Jaren be utilized in ways that he's not utilized at Memphis. And a lot of it might be the fact that
you have Steven Adams.
You have Steven Adams, number one. You got Ja Morant, who needs to have open space and needs to have. But Jaren, just even from the first game, Gabe, the Puerto Rico game, seeing him even go back further, there was some dope video from Las Vegas when they were actually in training camp that you could see they were starting to kind of introduce some of those, pick and pop, pick and roll kind of concepts with Jaren. And it looked awkward. It looked like he had not done this before. And then you see him
in the game.
You see him against Spain and you go, oh, I see what this could be. Now, what I have noticed is a few times Jaren turns the wrong way, seals the wrong way when he does dive. Maybe doesn't do it as quick as he should. And so there's still some trying to figure out how to move his body in that kind of an action. But if he can get it.
Kenny, there's some concepts that I think carry over to in-game situations for the Grizzlies. If you're in a tight game at the end and you need to go get a bucket, if Jaren can be a good on-ball screener for Ja Morant, dealing with that type of two-man game with all of their capabilities, what are you going to do? And we saw them go into the well a couple times last year in late game situations, and it was unstoppable at times.
Yep.
So, if Jaren can become the on-ball screener that we're seeing right now in the FIBA World Cup for the Grizzlies, I'm telling you, man, the sky is the limit for where this team can operate, how they can operate in the half court, because that's been one of their big struggles too, right?
Yeah,
is operating
100%.
in the half court and trying to find sort of concepts to go get buckets.
I mean, think about it this way. Steven Adams is known for setting probably the best screens in the entire NBA.
Yes.
But what's one thing that happens when he sets a screen is the guy that is defending him can blitz Ja off that, and because they don't have to worry about Steven.
That's the other thing is Steven doesn't have the offensive capabilities to make you worry, and he doesn't really dive to the hoop. He doesn't really pick and roll and get by the rim to go finish. He doesn't have any type of mid range. He can't shoot from three. If you can get Jaren Jackson Jr. more involved,
opens everything up.
Oh my gosh, that type of two-man game is just so brutal to try to defend. You have a 6'11" unicorn, and you have a guy who is arguably, outside of De'Aaron Fox, the fastest guy in the league and one of the best penetrators, and a guy who at 6'3" 2 years ago led the damn league in paint points.
Yeah, bro, come on.
There's just so many possibilities that could open up with him. Also, I do want to mention Santi Aldama.
Yes,
man, he's grown into himself. He had 14 points against USA. I was wrong about when he was drafted 30th overall. They snuck him into the first round. He was projected as an undrafted free agent, and that guy is a certifiable great role player for this team, and he will be going forward. He's got. And speaking of a guy who's got multiple capabilities, he needs to get better on the defensive end, but his offensive capabilities are very fun.
He creates mismatches in ways that it's ooh, how do you handle this dude? Especially if you got a guy like Jaren. If he's playing, minutes with Jaren, it's how do you guard 2-footers like that can both go inside the paint, can take you off the dribble, and shoot threes? How do you?
It becomes tough.
It becomes tough.
And honestly, obviously not having them on, they're not really on the floor at the same time, generally speaking.
Could they be though?
But I mean, last year, looking at how Santi filled in for Jaren for those first 15 games when he was hurt,
right,
and had to get his knee right, he's shown us what he's worth. And now with the FIBA World Cup, playing against the USA, dropping 14, he's adding to it, and I think he's adding to his bag as well. Now the defensive side needs to come along, like I said, but he's a fun player to watch.
I agree totally. All right, you ready? Topic number 2.
Yes, sir.
Here we go. Man, drama in the NBA this entire offseason. And last night, it felt like was probably one of the most dramatic things that I have ever, honestly, in all of this whole back and forth between agents and GMs and teams. When have you ever heard a player come out and say what James Harden said about Daryl Morey?
I've never heard it. I've never heard it. But what I'll say is James Harden always asks for trades, and he's going to get his trade by hook or by crook, baby. Whoa. He doesn't give a damn. He will dig into that bag. He'll wear a fat suit. He'll tell you he didn't say he wanted to trade in the first place. And now, in front of kids at a charity event that he was running
in China,
he will tell everyone, I will never play for Daryl Morey. He's a liar, and I do not want to be part of a franchise that he is managing.
And then he said, let me
say it again.
Let me say that again.
I'm frustrated by this in a lot of ways. And the reason I say that is James Harden, he's going to have to start to understand the inner workings of how these things, like he wanted to go to the Rockets at the beginning of the offseason. Ime Udoka shot that down. He said, no, I don't want James Harden on my team. I'd rather have Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. Okay. So they do that. Off top, James is a little perturbed. Now he asks for a trade once he opts into his player option. And the only taker out there right now, Kenny, you could tell me if I'm wrong. And I guess that like they could do some backdoor deals here, and maybe there's a Dame James Harden trade that goes down, but I don't think that's there. The only taker seems to be the Clippers, right?
Well, that's the only team that James Harden has said he has made a point. I want to go to the Clippers.
And then the reason that he said this at his charity event is because Daryl Morey and the 76ers have shut down trade talks because they don't think that they can get all they want out of a James Harden trade. And I don't blame them by any stretch of the imagination, right?
Where do you lie on this? Because you've got the Dame Dollar situation. You got the James Harden situation. You got Portland trying to deal with that. Him saying, I'm only going to go to Miami. Dame Dollar saying that. You got James saying, I only want to go to L.A. Both of these franchises are saying,
I think it's BS. I think because you're handcuffing the franchise, because now they're not going to get a good return on you, because whoever wants to go make that deal knows how desperate you are to get rid of that guy and how much they're not willing to play for you in any other franchise. So your hands are tied, and you have to take less than what you're owed or worth, or what they're worth on the open market. That frustrates the hell out of me, man, because you could hurt a franchise long term doing that. And there's, I mean,
I've heard people say that franchises are obligated to kind of fulfill the wishes of these guys.
Okay, Damian Lillard's a little different. He's been in Portland for how long? His entire career. And Joe Cronin wants to do right by him, and they want to. James Harden has been in a 76ers uniform for a year and a half. What do they owe him? Like, let's be honest. A 34-year-old that couldn't get them over the hump in the Eastern Conference. What do they owe him?
And they paid him
so
much money, Gabe.
Just be honest with me. What do they particularly owe James Harden? Damian Lillard, I think, is a different situation altogether. He's given the best years of his life to that Portland Trailblazers franchise, and they have ruined it in a lot of ways. It's not through a fault of not trying. They just didn't hit on some of the guys they brought in. Yusuf Nurkic was always hurt. CJ McCollum was too short. They had too small of a backcourt then. Jeremy Grant just didn't turn out to be a great I mean, he's a good player, but he didn't turn out to be perfect alongside Dame. But it's through no fault of trying, but he's given some good years, and the Trailblazers have failed to surround him with the pieces to go win a championship. The 76ers have what they need. It's just James Harden has lost a step. He's inconsistent, and they need somebody to be able to run that point. Now, do I think they're better, and do I think that they should go into the year with James Harden? If James Harden wants to play for the 76ers, hell yes. He's at $35.6 million. He's not taking a whole bunch of money, but they'll be better with him in a 76ers uniform as long as he stays, because then if he leaves, you're going to have to find a new lead guard. Is Tyrese Maxey ready to take the steps? There's a lot of questions and no answers. But for James Harden to do this, I think there's a day of reckoning coming from him. He's 34 years old. He's got to understand his worth.
There's a reason why he didn't go into the open market, Gabe.
But if I'm a franchise, Kenny, who needs a lead guard, how am I going to rationalize? This dude's asked for 3 trades in how many years? 3 trades in 4 or 5 years?
4 or 5 years, yeah. Houston.
How can I rationalize signing this guy to a max contract when I know at the first inconvenience he's going to tell me to F off?
You can't.
I can't. And he's 34 years old. He's not as good as he used to be. He's a volume shooter that sometimes is very inefficient. Like, James Harden's got to start understanding his value. And you see this sometimes with just older players that have been great in their past. They don't realize when they're starting to slow down. And I think James Harden's right there. And also, for Daryl Morey, I kind of feel for him because he has gone out of his way to try to treat James Harden the right way. He really has. And people may disagree with that statement, but I don't give a damn. Daryl Morey oversaw his MVP year,
Right.
his assist championships, his scoring championships, 55 playoff wins. And during that time, James Harden averaged 29 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists. He gave the green light to James Harden to say, you do whatever the hell you want to do. You run this franchise. And now James Harden has turned on him. And that relationship, which was rock solid when he went to the 76ers, that's the reason he went to the 76ers in the first place. That relationship that was rock solid is already broken apart because James Harden feels as if he's being disrespected by Daryl Morey because Daryl Morey doesn't want to trade him for a bag of balls. That's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
That's crazy.
I'm a pro player guy, but that's crazy.
I'm a pro player person too, and I like some of the player empowerment things going on in the NBA because I think some of these guys need to be treated better and allowed to win. They need to be put in winning situations. But James Harden is in a winning situation. He is. He's just got to take it upon himself to get better and get that team over the hump, but he doesn't want to do that right this second. And it's just, if I'm 76ers fan, if I'm Daryl Morey, if I'm anybody in that front office, I'm pissed off and frustrated. But it sounds like Daryl Morey, according to a report I saw today, Daryl Morey says he doesn't give a damn what James said.
He said he is unmoved.
Yeah, he doesn't give a damn because let's be honest, he's seen this before. Yeah, like he's seen James and how James acts when he doesn't get his way.
This is Tuesday for him.
Exactly,
Like,
he's used to this. But I find it strange that James Harden's willing to burn that bridge the way he is right this second when Daryl Morey has been one of the bigger keys to success for him in his career.
You know, it's funny because like at the beginning of the offseason, we're sitting here going, man, Dame Dollar just really messed Portland up. And God, what a diva. That's kind of been the story about him. James Harden said, hold my beer, bro.
Yeah,
I got you.
I still can't get it in front of a damn charity event in front of kids
In
bro.
China.
Like, why can't you just tell the press that app? Like, call Woj. Call Shams and tell them how you feel. You don't have to tell all the kids that Daryl Morey's a piece of garbage.
That's always been the way it's done. So that's why I woke up this morning and I was like, no way this is real.
And he knew cameras were on him. But again, it does show he's willing to go to no end to get what he wants.
Golly.
He'll wear a fat suit. He'll eat some Whataburger.
Yes, he will.
He'll go to the strip club. He'll do whatever
he'll hang out with little baby.
He'll do whatever he needs to do to go get that trade request fulfilled.
All right, topic number 3. Man, it's a big event in the UFC this weekend. UFC 292, headlined by champion Aljamain Sterling, bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling fighting against Sean O'Malley, Sugar Sean O'Malley. What are your thoughts about UFC 292?
First of all, I got to say, very good card. Chris Weidman is the final event on the prelims.
How cool is that?
I want to see how he looks.
I want to see it too, man.
I mean, how old is he at this point? He's up there.
Got to be in close to his 40s.
I think he might be 40. He's either like 30. He might be 30. He's somewhere between 38 and 40. He's
coming back against Brad Tavares, bro. That is going to be a banger, man. God.
And that man, Chris Weidman's dealt with a whole lot in his career. I want to see what he looks like. This is probably the end. This is probably
it
the
has
end.
To be, right?
I wonder how this goes after this fight. And he may retire on the spot. I haven't really seen reports on that, but he's getting up there in age and he ain't what he once was. But as you start the card, Pedro Munoz versus Marlon Vera. I love Chito. I want to see Chito show something. He's a -190. The Mario Batista fight, they're actually trying to find a fill-in right now because I guess the first one didn't go right. So we'll see what happens there.
Wait, they got Cody Garbrandt not fighting in that?
From what I see here, it says opponent to be announced.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it looks like, I don't know if that fell through or what. It sounds like it did. Then you have Neil Magny and Ian Gary before you get to the co-main event. But Neil Magny, brother, he's a stud late in his career, but he's so inconsistent. He's had so many inconsistencies in his career. He's been right on the precipice of really competing in his division and potentially getting like championship fights, but he never gets over that hump.
Yeah, this is the ultimate like gatekeeper fight because Ian Gary,
12-0.
Ian Gary is a budding superstar in the UFC. He's from Ireland, so obviously you got those like Conor McGregor type vibes. He's a big kid who can punch, who can really
Toss
do it all.
His hands, but But this is Dana White throwing him to.
Well, this is a step up in competition.
Well, and he's throwing him. This is a dude who throws a bunch of hands.
Right.
And I don't know how well rounded Ian Gary is. We haven't seen enough of him, but he's throwing him to premier wrestler.
Right.
Hey, he's been doing this for 10 to 15 years now, wrestling the hell out of people. Let's see if you can stay in there and get into that deep water. It's
a good enough fight to where you go, I like that matchup. But if Ian Gary beats Neil Magny, that's a big name for him to get on his side. And then I think that's when you kind of start seeing the rocket ship move for him.
Yep.
But then again, it's Neil Magny. And so if Neil Magny comes out and just stifles him, grapples him up against the cage, then you just go, well, that's just Neil Magny and what he does, right? Like, that's just what he does. But it's going to be a fun fight. I mean, Ian Gary has the potential to be that dude, honestly. He's big. He's a good fighter.
Yep. And then co-main event, Zhang Wei Li versus Amanda Lemos. I have been impressed with Zhang Wei Li and how she's responded to back-to-back losses against Rose Namajunas. I am very impressed with how she has sort of been able to. She beat Joanna, and then she came out last time and beat Carla Esparza.
Yep.
And got the belt back. Just subbed her. Sub to Esparza.
I mean, just
right,
wreck shop.
And Esparza is decent on the ground.
She's a wrestler, yeah.
Right? So, like, for Zhang Wei Li to do that, like, I've been very impressed. She's still 34. She's still got a lot in the tank, but I don't know how much chance I give Amanda Lemos in this fight. We'll have to see.
I love Rose Namajunas. I think she's awesome, but in terms of that division, Zhang Wei Li is my favorite fighter. Like, she is such a baller, dude.
Yep. She's unbelievable.
So good.
Her striking too.
Oh,
her striking is just so on point. It is on point as hell. If she never got caught by that Rose Namajunas kick, I sort of wonder.
Filthy.
I sort of wonder where how it would be for her right now. But she responded really well. I got to give her credit. Two straight wins.
You remember that Joanna Jędrzejczyk fight that she had?
Yeah.
That Zhang Wei Li had.
Yeah.
That fight was probably top 5 fight of all time for me.
Yeah, when she had Joanna looking like Megamind. She had Joanna with just her
I've
head
seen
was
aliens.
Up, brother.
Aliens are real.
Dude, her head was so swollen up. I felt bad for Joanna, but she stuck through 5 rounds, even with those. They were like hematomas on her head.
Bro, her forehead was like.
It was terrible.
I've never seen
people were making
like
fun of her. And I remember tweeting that night. I said, I know people are getting their jokes off, but she was a damn warrior tonight. Like, I feel bad. She's getting memed right now.
I'd be in the corner crying. Like 10 minutes before all that stuff went down.
But the main event, Aljamain Sterling protecting that belt against Sugar Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley has to show right now that he's got to show right now he's more than an entertainer.
Yup.
Because Aljamain will take you to those deep waters, get your ass on the ground by any way necessary, and try to make you uncomfortable as possible. I can't imagine. I mean, Aljamain is not going to stand and trade with Sean. He's not going to do that because he knows what that would end in. He wants to make sure that he takes him to those deep waters, gets Sean O'Malley tired so he's not as effective on his feet. I would imagine some leg kicks are going to be a part of the plan here. But I like Aljamain here. But Sean O'Malley, this is that test. Here we are. We've had the slower build up of him as an entertainer.
Yep.
And Dana White saying, all right, you get your shot, brother. Let's see what you can do with it.
Well, he already beat Peter Yan.
Yep.
So that's interesting. So we've seen that Sugar Sean can do it. The question is, will Aljamain
against this level of fighter though, this guy who has an inordinate amount of confidence since getting that belt.
Well, and here's the crazy part. Aljamain has said, he said today, this will be his final fight at bantamweight.
Really?
He will be moving up. And then it's Merab Dvalishvili, his teammate, the guy who's number 3, I think, in the division. He's like, it's his turn to go. So will he go out as champion, or will Sugar Sean make that?
I mean, here's the thing, and I know it was a different fight, just sort of like looking at it, because Aljamain was just all over Henry Cejudo's legs the whole time, trying to get takedowns, and he failed a whole lot, but he got 4.
Yeah.
I have seen Aljamain beat Henry Cejudo, man. Like, that's just that gives me way too much. It gives me an inordinate amount of confidence in him at bantamweight, right? Like, you beat Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo was unbelievable for years and came back to fight you because he thought he could beat you and unseat you, and he couldn't do it. And I know it was a split decision, but Aljamain was very active on the ground when he got Henry Cejudo down there.
Yeah.
Fair amount of control. Even when he was on his feet, I was pretty impressed with what he was throwing out there. But like it's hard for me right now to see someone beating Aljamain Sterling. But
yeah,
this guy Sean O'Malley, he can hit you with one and your lights could be out.
Who do you want to win?
I would say Aljamain.
Really?
I would want to see Aljamain win. I'm going against the grain here. I think everybody wants to see the big entertainer win so they can see him in more important events. But Aljamain, man, I have respect because he had to get drugged through the mud after he won that damn belt when Peter Yan illegally kneed him, and everybody said he was being soft and he's not a good fighter and he got lucky. He has responded to that by winning and telling everyone to F off. Right? Like that's where I have a lot of, and he came back after that DQ, beat Petr Yan, beat TJ Dillashaw, beat Henry Cejudo all in a row. Like a
lot of respect for that kid.
I can't hate on him. Do you want Sugar to win?
I think, especially knowing that this is going to be Aljamain's last fight in bantamweight, I would like it to go to, unless you were to go, because then you set up storylines, right? It's all about the storylines. Yeah. So then what happens if Sugar Sean beats him, gets the belt?
They run it back?
They don't run it back.
Because he says he's not going to be in bantamweight anymore.
Marab's turn. Marab comes in and avenges his teammate. That's a story, bro.
That's a storyline, but I like Aljamain. I really do.
I do too, yeah. I wouldn't be upset either way.
Like seeing that type of response after getting killed by the rest of his peers.
Yeah, it was brutal.
That was not fun.
It's like, let me take a baseball bat and hit you in the forehead and see how it affects you.
They're saying he's being soft, but 3 straight wins, keeping the belt. Man, you got to get respect where respect is due. But that's we're done with the hot 3. Anything else?
That's it, man.
What you got?
Man, that's all we got, bro.
That Michael Oher story was a little crazy, wasn't it?
Oh, can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, come on. What's up?
I'll let you go because I'm going to get petty if I start go.
I just can't believe that this entire time. So Michael Oher, for those that haven't learned about it, through this whole process with the Tuohys, we thought he was adopted. We thought he was legally adopted by them, and they were his legal guardians.
Well, the Blind Side told us that.
It did. It turns out this entire time, 19 years into his relationship with the Tuohys, he's under a conservatorship. And he never made any money from Blindside. I'm not going to act as if I didn't think there was anything fishy with their relationship. I always figured there was something going on. I've heard murmurs, whispers. It's really a bad kept secret. But to hear that Michael Oher never made anything off Blindside and the children,
right?
SJ and Collins made what, 4.6 million plus off of the Blindside, and Michael Oher didn't get to pocket any money. I can't believe it. I'm at a loss for words that is what we're dealing with right this second.
Well, I mean, even back in the day, and it's a part of the movie, the TSSAA thought that something fishy was going on there, right? Like they were like, wait a second.
NCAA did too.
NCAA did too. Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, the story could have been, I mean, the story I wish was better, but it's the fact that that's his life story that was being told.
Yes, and he didn't make any money off of it.
And he made $0 off of that.
The other part of this is if he really, because Michael Oher claims he learned it was a conservatorship in February of 2023, so not that long ago. Could you imagine if you thought you were adopted for 19 years and you figure out that no, they really just sort of control your likeness and your money, basically.
Yeah.
That's what a conservatorship is. We dealt with the Britney Spears thing for all that time. She finally got let go of it. And Michael Oher's been a model citizen, man. It's not like
100%.
It's not like he was on Britney Spears time. You know what I mean? He's not been all over the place, drugged up or anything. He has just about a clean criminal record. There's no reason he should have been on a conservatorship this long. And I feel like 10 years into the thing, if they were trying to act in his best interest, they could have said, hey, we can nullify this conservatorship and we can continue our relationship like it is as a family, instead of having it hang over his head all this time.
Well, and again, I think we do need to make the clarification that all we have right now is the side of Michael Oher and the stuff that his lawyer put out today. Yep. We haven't heard from the Tuohy family or their legal representation. I do know they talked to Jeff Calkins with the Daily Memphian and 92.9 ESPN, but I just from the way that it looks now, right now, just face value, it just does not look. It just feels like Michael Oher has been taken advantage of, and that his life story has been told in such a way that he's not the hero of his own life story. And if anybody deserves to be, his story is incredible.
It is. It is. Somebody who overcame everything to get where he went, to make $30 million in the NFL and be a first-round draft pick. Overcame everything. And I do think, like, if you're saying that they did this from the beginning just to get over on Michael Oher, I think that's a step too far. I think people can get into things with good intentions.
Right.
But in the end, when money comes into the question, when worth comes into the question, when they realize what they can get out of a relationship, those intentions may change.
Yep.
And I think that's what we're looking at right this second. Again, it's a little too early to tell exactly how everything went down, but I feel for Michael Oher. And can I, sidebar, I never was really a big fan of The Blind Side. No. I really wasn't, because they painted him as this big oaf who didn't know how to do anything, who was dumb. There was a scene in the damn in the movie where he's like looking at a balloon and he's like fascinated by this balloon. We're talking about an 18-year-old kid they're trying to portray who was good at basketball and football.
I agree totally.
And they painted him as just this idiot.
They made everybody in that movie look dumb except for
Leanne Toohey, old Sandra Bullock.
Old Sandra.
Yeah.
And I just go, man, get out of my face.
But that movie always bothered me with how he was, and he took issue with it. I think 2015, he really came out and said he hated how he was.
Yeah, in his book
that
the first book, he's an author of 2 books, bro.
Yeah.
In his first book that he wrote, he said, man, I'm not a big fan of the way I was portrayed in that movie.
His second book's coming out soon. He only has 1 right now. Well, but his second book,
that's what I'm saying.
2 books now.
Yeah, he's written 2 books. One's coming out.
He was supposed to have a signing.
Yeah.
Like pretty soon here in Memphis. It looks like that's going to be on hold. But that story's crazy. I would imagine we'll be talking about it when Christian gets back in studio too. My gosh, wild stuff. But we're about to the end of the show. So make sure you subscribe on the Bluff podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. Hit up this YouTube channel. Make sure you go subscribe to Bluff City Media on YouTube. The best content on the internet right now if you're a Memphis fan. And I think that's hands down. You can check out Tigers Untapped, the Anthony Sane Show, and there's a whole lot more where that came from. Bluff City Bets, the whole 9 yards. But make sure you go subscribe, and Christian will be back next week, and we'll talk to you then.
Thank you for listening to On the Bluff. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. Also, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co for comprehensive coverage of Memphis sports and how you can become an insider.